So we're nearly into a week since Japan started to release the Fukushima wastewater into the Pacific Ocean. How has the process for this 30-year-long project been for the past week? For more, we're joined by Steven Borowiec this morning. Welcome to the program.
Good morning.
So Steven, how is the process going so far? I mean, what's it looking like at the moment?
By all indications, things are going kind of according to plan. The South Korean government has their own, I think it's 4 spots in Korean waters where they're assessing the levels of elements such as tritium. And they said yesterday that they've not, according to their measurements, everything are within safe levels. That's not surprising. We should keep in mind that Fukushima is still fairly far away from the Korean Peninsula, and this water release only just started about a week ago. So the Japanese government is also maintaining a website where they're providing some kind of frequently updated information with diagrams and numerical readings of the different elements. So things seem to be going as planned, but as the previous news stories have shown, a lot of this is about perception. A lot of this is about how people feel about Japan's decision to do this. So we've not been able to come up with any kind of real scientific basis for criticizing this. Right now, I think things are more at the level of rhetoric and perhaps emotion, but this is definitely something that's going to be an issue of regional concern for a while going forward.
Right, we are only a week into the process. Like you said, it's a 30-year-long process. So still in early stages to really evaluate the scientific side of it. Our Lee Kyung-eun reported earlier that tensions are rising between Japan and China over the wastewater release. Steven, what's really happening?
Well, I'm not on the ground in China, but there just seems to be, we need to keep in mind that these are 2 countries that have a long history of antagonism, and there just seems to be quite a lot of public discontent in China about the decision by Japan to do this, both on the levels of governments and among the public. There's stories in the Chinese and international media about how people online in China are expressing displeasure with this and are making these harassing phone calls to various Japanese institutions. I can't really speak to, exactly what things are like in China now, but I would just draw attention to, perhaps people in China feel as though Japan went ahead with this without directly consulting the Chinese government, or perhaps people in China feel as though, particularly people who rely on the ocean, who rely on kind of the seafood industry, maybe they feel as though even if Japan is doing this within safe international standards, they might feel like, due to the perception of seafood and due to the perception that this water could possibly be dangerous, that their livelihoods are being affected in a way that they had no say in. So I guess there is some frustration there. The task will then go to perhaps the leaders of the country to maybe try to talk this out, to maybe try to calm the situation down.
Right, similar tensions, or rather I would say concerns, are also rising here in the country. That's why the government is conducting a 100-day intensive inspection into seafood imports because of the Fukushima concerns. Now, do you think it'll actually help tame those fears?
I think it can only help. At the very least, the government is, I think, showing the Korean public that they're taking this seriously and that they're mobilizing resources to deal with this. They are not simply relying entirely on the word of Japan or the International Atomic Energy Agency. They've allocated their own resources to this, and they are taking at least some kind of preventative steps. So I think that's prudent. We're early in the game, and I would be very surprised if shipments coming out of the ocean now displayed any sign of increased radiation. You'd have to ask a scientist about, the real potential for risk here. Like, I've read testimonies by scientists on this issue who kind of giggle about the suggestion that any of this could be dangerous. They say that these seafood now would be carrying just very standard and very predictable levels of radiation. There's nothing for anybody to worry about. But just on an optical level, and just in terms of attempting to allay concerns among the Korean public, I think it makes sense for the Korean government to kind of attack this head on and to show that they are providing, not only relying on outside assessments, but attempting to have their own kind of objective assessment. I think that makes sense.
Right, and as a correspondent yourself, how seriously do you think South Korea is taking or coping with this whole Fukushima release project?
I mean, I do think that the Yoon government is taking this seriously. I think President Yoon is in a bit of a challenging scenario in that he has invested quite a lot of political capital in improving ties with Japan. And so he's got a kind of difficult balance to strike where he has to be very mindful about the fears of the Korean public. And you can see that he's doing that in that he has maintained South Korea's ban on seafood imports from this Fukushima area. He has, at the very least, acknowledged that there is a potential kind of risk there, or that the public opinion surrounding that issue is just kind of too volatile to touch. So I think for a number of reasons, he's taking it very seriously. Time will tell, and hopefully we'll get more and more data as things go ahead that we can base our decisions when it comes to this on real scientific information. And hopefully over the coming weeks and months, we'll get a clearer sense of just what, if any, kind of public health risks this poses, and we'll be able to craft policies and craft our responses based on that. But just in the meantime, it does seem to me like President Yoon and his administration are taking this issue pretty seriously.
Right, that's why the government announced it yesterday that it's allocating over 560 million US dollars for Fukushima-related matters to really get through and overcome those fears and challenges.
Yes, it remains to be seen exactly where that money will go. But yeah, I do think that Yoon has, I think that just part of what makes this challenging in Korea is that seafood is such a huge part of the diet. I mean, almost every meal is served with some kind of fish, or fish is used as seasoning and in sauces. And that's just a really kind of core part of the Korean diet. So I do think that Yoon has ample reason to want to assure the Korean public, and I think he's done something wise by mobilizing at least some of this country's very robust scientific infrastructure. South Korea employs a lot of scientists, has a lot of research institutes, a lot of universities. So I do think the infrastructure is in place to deal with this soundly.
All right, Steven, thanks so much for joining us this morning. You have a good day.
Thank you. You too.